Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. I'm Rosa, the Marketing Associate here at Simplain. I'll be responsible for the speaker introduction as well as facilitating the Q&A section. Before we start, I have to mention that this webinar will be fully recorded. All the attendees will receive a copy of the recording as well as the presentation deck. Also, just a reminder that we will have a free-form discussion in the end. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to type your question in the chat box, and we will answer every questions at the end according to the submission order. So let's get started. And before we start, I would like to wish everyone a happy National Supply Chain Day, including our Canadian friends. This is truly a day for everyone, including us, to appreciate the hard work for you to provide the stability and always be reliable. So without further ado, we will have our first speaker, Lucy Lena from GS1 US. She is the Director of Supply Chain Visibility. She has over 20 years of experience in supply chain management for retail and wholesale industry, and she would like to be referred to as Lucy for short. Thank you, Lucy, for coming here today and sharing your expertise with us. This is our second speaker. He is the founder and the president of Simplain. He's also the visionary behind Simplain Vendor Portal, which is a leading vendor collaboration software for retailers and wholesalers aimed at improving data quality, transparency, and speed to market. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for being here today.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, we have Ed from Retail AG. He has over 30 years of experience in retail supply chain operations and IT systems. He has been in numerous C-suite roles for large retailers and IT companies. Thank you, Ed, for coming here today and sharing your expertise with us.
Terrific. Thanks, Rosa, for the intro. If you want to give us a few minutes, thanks for joining the webinar. I'm going to take a few slides just to set the context, and before turning it over to our experts on the panel, Lucy and Sanjay. Now, I think most of us in retail and wholesale realize that for sure, definitely on every project that we do, data always turn out to be a hot topic. I mean, as a CIO, I can't really remember any project that I've been involved with that data didn't come up as a potential detriment to what we want to deliver. And realistically, when you're doing projects, when you run into data challenges, the negative impact could be relatively substantial, right? In terms of affecting your go live date and also in terms of achieving speed to value. Next slide. Now, a lot of the challenges with data come by way of errors, dupes, formatting inconsistencies, and all of them contribute to lacking of referential integrity. And then the mismatch across the master data and subsequent systems are fairly well known. And I think all of us are quite used to some of these challenges and obstacles. Next slide. In our day-to-day operations. Now, frankly, when you don't have data integrity, not only would it impact a lot of our business ops from a day-to-day basis, but realistically, particularly as we get some additional regulatory demands put to us, compliance turns out to be a really huge challenge when we run into these sort of data challenges. And as most of us tend to do during our projects, we never allocate enough time or resources or money to really address a lot of the root causes that tend to contribute to some of the data problems that we experience in the industry. Next slide. The question that we always ask ourselves is really, I mean, is there a way to address the root cause and somewhat mitigate these symptoms from occurring, right? And as it turns out, the gist of today's session is that there is. What we want to do is really address, as I mentioned, the core problem versus the symptoms. And it has far-reaching implications, not only, as I mentioned, in terms of business operational challenges day to day, but for the organizations that are currently thinking and who might not be, right, in terms of practical applications of AI within our workflow and business operations. Having a clean quality data foundation is truly a must-have. So next slide. So hopefully I've done a bit in terms of teeing things up for our next speaker. And once again, thanks for attending the webinar. So with that, let me turn it over to Lucy. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Next slide. So we talk about, as Ed has mentioned, all the problems that come out, and we see all the fires it can cause and all the smoke that it can, before the fire and all the problems. But like Ed was mentioning, we don't always spend the time or even have the training to understand what the root cause of bad data is. And we have seen, not just in all industries, a major root cause of data errors is because our data lives in siloed, disparate systems. And in order to connect that systems, there's so much translation and interpretation and mapping that needs to happen. So in that process, a lot of the data gets lost or, input wrong, or there's many different scenarios. Now, this is where the importance of interoperability happens, right? So instead of trying to decipher each other's systems and databases, data can be integrated seamlessly, regardless of the technology used. How does this happen? If it's based on a common language, a language that can easily be interpreted, ingested by any system or technology. And that's exactly what we do at GS1. So we are a global, neutral, non-for-profit organization that focuses on just getting supply chain partners to talk and understand and collaborate and establish this common language. So here's an example. This slide shows, a really cool example that actually happened to me. If I was traveling to Europe and, washed my hair, it was wet, and I took the blow dryer, and guess what? The outlet did not fit the plug. Right? This is a true story. And I heard someone also that knows somebody that actually almost set their hair on fire because the voltage was different. So that was a bigger problem than mine, right? But that's exactly what happens in our day-to-day businesses. We don't have that common adapter to be able to adapt your system to my system. And having that common language is what really enables that interoperability, being able to ingest the data and get those operational efficiencies, being scalable, ultimately being able to have that data accuracy. Next slide. So a lot of people know us, and even probably they use us every day, but they don't know it's GS1. So when you go to the grocery store and you scan a barcode, I don't know if you can see my can, any barcode that you scan to pay at the grocery store, that is actually licensed. That number that is in that barcode is licensed by GS1 US or, GS1 whatever country, right? It's being scanned at. So there's about 10 billion scans every day. But really what we do is not just the barcode. We do just that collaboration that brings supply chain partners together and solve business challenges. So we are the most widely used standard worldwide. We have about 160 member organizations around the world that support the local businesses and local regulations. And in the US specifically, we serve about 300,000 businesses from all industries. And we all start at, as you see at the top, this supply chain, we all wish it was this linear and easy, right? But it's not. It is complex. And if we have the right foundation that starts with unique identification, that is the foundation. So you can license a number called the GS1 company prefix that is used to identify your company. And then you can enumerate your products with global trade item numbers, your locations with global location numbers, pallets or any logistics unit, you can number it. Those are the serial shipping container codes. Then it's the capture piece. So that is the data carriers, barcodes, RFID tags, any kind of data carrier that can be put in a, let's say, a case or a pallet. So the product, as it moves, you can capture specific information that is vital to that product. For example, GTIN and lot. This is what has been defined by FISMA regulation as the traceability lot code. This is industry saying we can use GTIN and lot as the best practice to share that traceability lot code. You can also put expiration dates, etc. And then there's the master data and transactional and event data. This can be shared in a common language. So master data for product information, a lot of you are familiar with the global data synchronization network. And that's just a way that the data is structured and is sent to the different systems from a centralized source of truth. That way you don't have to worry about, smoke signals or post-it notes or emails to set up and update your product information. There's also Data Hub. So we put Data Hub location here, but there's also products, product information that can live in Data Hub. It's a tool that GS1US offers to anyone who has a company prefix. They can use it at no cost. And then there's the transactional data. A lot of you have heard of EDI, right? For example, 856 or ASN, Advanced Ship Notice. This is something that has been used in the industry for over 30 years. We work very closely with that X12 standard, and we have best practice out there for that. And there's EPCIS, which is kind of newer to some industries. Healthcare has been using it. It's electronic product code information services. And in food now, there's a lot of interest due to FISMA 204, for example. This is just a way to structure the data again, a language. It's not as sophisticated as it sounds, I promise. Next.
Thank you, Lucy, for setting up the foundation here. So Simplain, many of you may be familiar. Yeah, many of you may be familiar with us. We are known for our solution, Simplain Vendor Portal. When we looked at the market in around 2014 timeframe, right? So our primary, we were looking at the solution was formed because of the data quality issues that we were facing with some of our customers in retail. So we thought, okay, what is the source of this issue, right? So the source of the issue, if you are looking from a retailer or a wholesaler perspective, source of most of these issues come, they get all of their data from the vendor. Lucy was just mentioning about, identify, capture, and share. So this is a share part of the equation is what we are trying to solve here. So from a retailer perspective, they get all of this information from the vendor. And sometimes, they were having to settle with less than perfect data. So the data issues could be anywhere from, not having the right check digit when you're introducing a new item. It could be incorrect descriptions, or sometimes the descriptions can have typos. It can be lowercase, uppercase issues. The non-standard descriptions are very common when in these kind of situations. Also dimensions, right? We went to implementing vendor portal at a very large retailer, and we saw a lot of their master data had length, width, and height as 111. What's happening is at the time of item introduction, the salesperson from vendor did not have this information, but they had to introduce this item quickly, and they were able to get that through by just settling for minimum data required to purchase that product and sell that product. But they kind of ignore the impact of not having the right dimensions when it comes to logistics. So these are some of the issues that we were looking at, and this problem has not been solved. And you can look at some of the data share issues have been already solved by EDI. For example, the EDI 850, which is purchase order, is well established and used by most retailers and vendors. Whereas in a workflow-driven situation like an item introduction or a cost and deal negotiation, this share aspect requires interaction between both parties, and that is where the vendor portal comes into picture. So if you can see this diagram, which shows the vendor on the left-hand side, retailer on the right-hand side, the typical interaction enabled by the Simplain vendor portal is basically the vendor submits something, it goes to the portal for triaging, and the retailer can visually or manually look at this data and review main purpose of this review will be for negotiation of terms and and cost and all other things. But in the process, it is also being reviewed by the master data team and category manager team for data completeness, data correctness, and everything. So the idea here is you solve the issue at the source, and you don't have this item going from vendor into your supply chain systems or ERP, before it is all, cleansed and if it is before it is perfect. So we basically making sure the data is complete and correct, by this collaboration, collaboration between multiple people on the retailer side, as well as multiple people on the vendor side. And it is a configurable workflow. So your different products, you may have a domestic product that may be going through a category manager and a master data team. You may have an import product that needs to go through your import team. You need to verify for the tariff codes, which are changing a lot nowadays. But basically, you need to make sure that your costing is correct. You factored in everything that you need, and then your landing cost and the margin calculations are correct. In addition to verifying the basic nomenclature of the item, description, the cleanliness of the dimension data, and everything that can go wrong with the item. How do we do this, right? So we are leveraging GS1. So we're very excited to be partnering with GS1 on this front. We are leveraging GS1 in multiple fronts. GS1 has a data hub which we have access to, which actually everybody has access to, where we can run a UPC or a GTIN and get the basic information about the product loaded. So this is happening at almost no cost to the retailer or Simplain. Um, then on top of that, if you have a GDSN provider, subscription or something, there are several GDSN providers out there. If you have subscription with one of them, we are able to connect to their APIs and download the information as the vendor is introducing the item. So this is including, all of your, not only the correct basic data, but also some additional data, including nutritions and product specifications, images, and all that. So we are not only making sure the data is correct, but is also complete. On top of that, there are a lot of other reasonability checks that we are now able to do with the help of AI. So for example, if somebody is selling a popcorn and if it is 3 kilograms, you know that 3 kilograms of popcorn is a truckload. So a human being can immediately look at that and say, hey, this for this product, this dimension does not look right. This sale size does not look correct. Now AI is able to assist the master data team and category managers in running through this kind of reasonability check that would be otherwise done by a human being. So our goal remains the same, improving data quality, transparency, and speed to market for the retailers and wholesalers. That is our number one goal. And to facilitate that, we are able to leverage the data that is available in GS1, as well as leveraging AI tools and some additional third-party APIs to make sure the data is complete and accurate. Next slide, please. So this is like a quick overview of the solution, the Simplain Vendor Portal. As I mentioned earlier, our goal is to be the most comprehensive vendor collaboration platform for retailers and wholesalers, with the aim of improving data quality, transparency, and speed to market for them. From a vendor perspective, we are certainly providing them enough tools to make sure they're enabled, so they have access to the data that they have published elsewhere or in GS1 or GDSN. We basically make it easy for the vendor. We also make them more accountable for the data, because there is part of the data that is owned by the vendor. There is part of the data that is owned by the retailer and wholesaler. So we are making each party accountable for their own data and make sure they have a common way to collaborate, thus increasing the transparency in the supply chain altogether. So the modules circled here, the vendor portal is a module, is a platform where you can pick and choose the modules you want to implement. Each of these modules run by themselves. You don't need to have one module for the other module to work. So they are designed to work independent of each other. The one modules that are circled here in this diagram are the ones we just will focus on. These are very important for when we talk about the data quality as well as traceability. So if you look at the vendor onboarding and maintenance, that is new vendor onboarding. So when you're onboarding a new vendor, there are a lot of things that could go wrong, right? We want to make sure we get all their certificates. We want to make sure we get the W-9s. We want to make sure we are able to do a background check. Are we able to validate their bank accounts? Are we able to verify their address is correct and it is matching to what they provided in W-9? All of this we are able to do with a set of APIs as well as applying AI algorithms. So just basically these are things your teams are now doing manually, and we are basically making it a little bit faster and easier for you to onboard a new vendor, completely streamlining the new vendor onboarding process. The compliance aspect of this is big because a lot of companies really don't know if the insurance provided by the vendor has already expired or when it is due. Those kind of tools are already available, alerting mechanisms, and for both vendors as well as for the retailers, wholesalers. Item introduction we already touched upon on the previous slide. Here we are talking about doing hundreds of validations making before the data ever gets into your supply chain. So that is our number one focus. And in addition to that, we are also making sure the retailer, wholesaler, and vendor have access to the rich data that is already published out there in GS1 or GDSN. We are able to get that data downloaded, and then the vendor is only negotiating with the retailer on the terms, not necessarily have to key in all the data. And also you're getting the one version of the truth for the data that is already published. Then you also have small vendors who do not probably publish information into GS1, or they are new to business or whatever, right? So for them, they can still use the system to key in all the data. It will still go through the same number of validations. They are able to take a picture of the product and load it into the system. It will basically read it using AI algorithms. You can also populate all your nutritional data. You can actually provide a rich set of data directly into the portal. The vendor portal, sometimes we deal with retailers and wholesalers who are going through mergers and acquisitions. They have different types of businesses. Vendor portal serves as a unifying platform where all the data entry to your organization starts. So it acts as a unifier in a lot of those scenarios. Our most popular module at this point is also deals and promotions, which is the third one in the circle from left, where we basically allow the vendors and retailers to negotiate a promotional event and the corresponding vendor funding. A lot of things could go wrong here as well. This includes, you may be having overlapping promotions, overlapping deals. You may be having, too much of funding that drives the cost of the product to negative. You may be, you may not be realizing a change in cost influenced by some other event happening in the system. So a lot of this is already handled, and our deals and promotion module handles pretty much every scenario that you can imagine in contract negotiation with vendor. Um, in addition to also handling, free-form funding like lump sums, cash for advertising, scan backs, bill backs, and all of the standard terms that you have with your vendors. Another important aspect is the order confirmation. So this is where you could the data issues that you're having in the master data, that will be eventually we get propagated into the orders. So we have additional checks and balances and order confirmation. So when the vendor is confirming a pickup order, they are supposed to provide a weight. And if that weight does not match to the master data, we ask the vendor, hey, by the way, you provided, based on whatever data you provided, supposed to be 1,000 pounds. Now it is like 800 pounds. Some of your items have wrong data. Can you go and fix your dimensions and weight? So we have again loop back mechanisms downside downstream in the order processing to further enforce the master data validations. Recently, we also enabled some FISMA compliance related features into this as well. Next slide, please. So I'll start with some of the use cases where GS1 and Simplain have been working together to solve the data quality issues and transparency issues and compliance related issues. So the first one, we touched upon this, where if you look at any retailer, there is they pretty much maybe have like 30,000 items, or maybe 100,000 if you did not clean up, or if you're a large operation, you may have a lot of products in your database, but probably there is some kind of standardization that you are able to do by synchronizing your data with the data that is already available in GS1. So if you just compare the dimensions, you compare, whether you have the rich data like images, nutritional data. So the vendor portal is an enabler for something like that. So we have worked with, large retailers in US and Canada. So our use cases are integrating with GS1 Data Hub in one scenario, which is the most basic validations we can run. We have also integrated with Syndigo. We have worked on with One World Sync, as well as with the GS1 ECC Net registry in Canada. So these are repositories against which you can bounce your master data, your existing master data, and make sure your data is synchronized. And also, when a new item comes for this from the same vendor, they don't need to really key in anything, like I mentioned earlier. They just provide the GTIN. We will go into the system and we will look at, okay, you provided this GTIN. This product is available in a pack of 6 and pack of 4. Which one you want to introduce to this retailer? So the vendor will choose that packaging hierarchy, and we will introduce that item. So, and later on, when the data gets changed in these registries, we download and resynchronize this data. So this kind of functionality has helped some of our retailers save a lot of pain downstream, both in terms of reducing downstream data fixing issues, but also sometimes even bigger issues like truck optimization and order optimization issues, which Lucy will go into next.
Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah, so talking about, I'm gonna like go backward in my previous life. And I worked for IPC, which is the supply chain arm of the Subway restaurant chain. And we wanted to do traceability. I mean, we were looking at FISMA compliance even back then in, I can tell you, 2013, 2014. But it was really, we saw the vision of having good traceability, in general, because customer safety and brand protection, you could not put a dollar amount on that, right? So when we started, they asked me when they brought me in, let's do a traceability project. And I quickly we very quickly realized we didn't have master data ready to do traceability data, because if your product information, your location information is inaccurate, your traceability information will be exponentially wrong. So we started cleaning up master data. We started doing the global data synchronization network adoption for our suppliers, distributors, redistributors. And just to give you an idea, we did a Six Sigma study, cleaning up about 83 products, having everyone look at one source of truth and not rely on someone being on vacation to get an update on your product, or, sticky notes, like I mentioned before, or emails. It was all in GDSN, and we would get updates all at the same time, our whole network. And just by cleaning up a pound here, half a pound there, we were able to quantify cost avoidance, a yearly cost avoidance of $1.3 million. And we have the case studies embedded in the presentations we will send out. But you can look up IPC Subway Traceability Case Study, where that was the foundation. We cleaned up master data, and just from truckload optimization and material handling, we were able to save $1.3 million. But then looking at the traceability aspect of things, and of course, we talk about FISMA 204, how important it is to meet these requirements. Well, for GS1 has brought all the stakeholders in the supply chain to talk about this and create tools and guidelines to tell you, okay, this is how you structure your GDSN or your system, whatever master data system you're using, in order to meet these FISMA specific requirements. Same thing with ASNs, same thing with, how you can use barcodes. None of this is mandated by the regulation, but we have created best practice. So not everyone is asking for something different, which is really, really important when we're all working towards a traceability program. And just to give you some tangibles, we actually measured when we implemented traceability for the Subway restaurant chain. It was about, just from one recall alone, we saved about $60,000 because we didn't have to go to every location we thought the product would have gone to, but we knew where it was going. And it wasn't even perfect. Not every restaurant was scanning each case, not every supplier was sending the information, but we were able to find the product within 2 hours instead of several days, just from having part of the system already implemented. It is possible. We saw it happen. And then if you think about it, yes, there's savings from not wasting product. There's savings from doing targeted recalls. But at the end of the day, the risk to the customer is what really, really matters. And there's no money value to be able to have your brand be, trusted and be safe when it comes to foodborne illnesses and recalls. Knowing and being able to expedite and take that product out of the system quickly is the most important thing. I mean, for most food companies, this is really what matters. Of course, meeting FISMA 204 requirements, which is pretty important too. But if you need to justify your projects, look at these case studies, look at people that have done it before, because it has been done and it is possible. So I talked about the FISMA. I don't know, Sanjay, does anybody want to add anything on the use case number 3?
Yeah. So there is there is a retailer we were talking to recently, and last 12 months, 14 months or so, almost every retailer has been racing to meet the previously set deadline for FISMA compliance of January 2026. We know it has been moved out now, but everybody was racing towards meeting that deadline, and there has been a renewed enthusiasm towards fixing or implementing traceability issues in the food supply chain, especially for retailers, right? So one of the challenges they were facing was how do we? They were not sure whether they can onboard their smaller vendors as quickly, because one of the enablers of FISMA is the EDI 856, which is Advanced Shipment Notice. So those vendors, EDI 856, by the way, is the different retailers and vendors have different level of competency with that process, and it's mostly sometimes they consider it as an optional EDI interface, but it has a lot of value with respect to both invoice matching as well as traceability at this point. So they were worried that the smaller vendors who are not yet EDI on board with the EDI, or they're barely consuming some EDIs, will have how they would be able to onboard. So we worked with the retailer, and we were able to add some additional functionality in our order confirmation, where the vendor can add, they can basically create their entire shipment in the order confirmation. So they can do a ASN generation from the portal itself. So they can generate them the pallet GTINs, and they can the pallet codes, as well as they can also generate the GS128 barcodes, which comprise of the KCPC and the SSCC and the traceability information, the expiration date of whatever batch number, all of that information, everything embedded into that GS128, which they can print from the portal and attach to the shipments. So that is like one way we were trying to mitigate the risk of not being compliant for FISMA with a smaller vendor community. I think a lot of the other larger organizations were already on some kind of enablement path towards EDI 856, We also worked with our partner, SPS Commerce, who has also been driving a lot of the EDI 856 initiatives with some of our customers as well.
All right, that was a lot of information. Thank you to all our speakers for sharing your valuable insights with us today. I'm sure that our audience would love to know more about the user cases. However, I do have some additional questions to all my speakers. So my first question is to Ed. Ed, as the only retailer in this group, what are you looking for from suppliers like GS1 and Simplain?
Tough question, but fastest install, lowest cost, and broadest scope, probably. But in all seriousness, I think there are a lot of viable providers in the marketplace. And for me personally, when I go through the selection process, expectation is set that I would really look at firms and companies that would have had tons of experience in delivering what I may be looking for. So that's one, experience. The second one, I would probably generically just call collaboration and flexibility. Um, and I would say that means a couple of different things. I think the biggest concern that a CIO typically would have implementing software is interoperability. You would want the solution that you're purchasing be able to interact and work nicely, not only with your own legacy applications, but also in what you may buy and use in your environment in the future. So adherence to open standards is another indicator that I would look for to make sure that the investment that I'm currently making will be a long-term one. The last is a little bit maybe of a nuance. I typically would look at a provider's roadmap for the future. It's always good to establish a long-term versus a short-term transactionally driven relationship. So having exposure and visibility as a retailer to what your solution and service providers may be looking at down the pike, particularly if it turns out that we're aligned in terms of what we want to do together into the future, would also provide a different element of relationship, right? Between the buying party, the retailer, and the selling party, the service or the solution provider. So I would say those are the three. I mean, to recap, prior implementation experience to handle, what keeps you up at night. Typically that happens during projects. The second one is really open standards and interoperability. Play nice with what you may have inside your environment and also with what might be available in the marketplace. And lastly, I would just call it alignment, right? Strategic alignment to how the companies are looking at the future and be able to kind of march down together to a path forward. So hope that makes sense. Thanks, Tristan.
And my second question will be towards Lucy and Sanjay. What have each of you seen as the most common mistake made by retailers and wholesalers in data governance or master data management?
I think a big mistake that is pretty common is not measuring what bad data is costing you. Just understanding the ripple effect of bad master data is something that, people take as the cost of doing business. But if you really, focus on measuring how much this affects your planning, your truckload optimization, how much this affects having the right product at the right place at the right time for your customers, which is kind of hard to measure, but just focusing on this could really bring justification to those, projects that you have in order to establish this data governance. Data governance is also huge and it's often neglected. who can change a product information, a location information? What is the team that is in charge of being the data stewards? Those kinds of things, people sometimes think they're not that important and they're the foundation of the other aspects of the business.
Yeah, I agree with you, Lucy, 100%. I think that a focus on data quality it is one of those initiatives which is powering the entire enterprise. But when you look at master data quality as a standalone, the benefits of having a better data quality may be not easily quantifiable. That's one of the challenges retailers face. And often because of that, these initiatives sometimes get a lower priority compared to, maybe having like a robot at the store doing inventory counts. This is easier to, visualize and do it. But if you have a bad data, then it is going to actually impact every initiatives, including the including the flashy ones. Um, and lot of retail organizations, sometimes they don't even have a separate data stewards team, or they don't have like a separate focus on the data quality. That is really up to individual retailers how they want to organize. But the data quality is a collective responsibility for the entire organization. It is not even, it is not just a part of the first category manager or just the master data team. It starts with the vendor. It actually even starts with the manufacturer even before that. So that is what this entire the data quality, right from manufacturer all the way to your consumer, right? So that is what I think the GS1 and the tools like our portal and other similar solutions are trying to bring to the market.
And I
Yeah,
think this is
I think
something,
if
oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, no, go ahead.
Just to Sanjay's point, this is something now FISMA 204, for example, is bringing companies to realize they cannot do this in a silo. They cannot do it within their own four walls. They need to collaborate with all their trading partners and make sure they're not trying to decipher each other's system, but they're interoperable. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was going to say, just from a retailer's perspective, listening to both of you, talking about investment and benefits. Typically, when I go through annual budget planning, working with my CFOs, I typically would classify the laundry list of projects into three buckets: continuity, compliance, and growth. And what I found to be effective is that when you look at data governance, Lucy, that you talked about, and then data cleansing that, Sanjay, you talked about, it doesn't just affect one project, right? It affects multiple projects. And when we, heard earlier about FISMA and other regulatory compliance demands, I typically would bucket an investment into that compliance spend category. Because to me, that's mandatory. I mean, a CFO and the rest of the executive team shouldn't really, kind of question what is required from a compliance perspective. So to me, that's a must do. The other bucket that's somewhat also a must do is really the continuity one. It's a bucket of spend and investment that a retailer would necessarily need to do in order to stay up and operate ongoing business. And data certainly has a lot of implications in those areas as well, relative to the projects that we may want to do. And I think the last category, growth-driven ones, tend to be a bit more discretionary. But I think historically, in my past anyway, classifying foundational investments such as data into the compliance and continuity buckets tend to get green lighted and not faced with a lot of resistance from either the board or the executive team. Thanks.
So much. And I have one last question. To all three of you, what advice would you give for people who are looking to improve this area?
Okay, I guess I'll go first.
Yeah.
One thing that we always like to say is do not try and reinvent the wheel. GS1 standards are really, we're not a technology solution. We're not a system. We are here to have all the supply chain stakeholders from all industries talk to each other. And, in most of these work groups that we have, and these meetings where we collaborate, a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm so glad I'm not the only one that has these problems. So make sure you're leveraging your network. Make sure you're leveraging those who have done the work that you're looking to do, because there are a lot of people that can help you alleviate a lot of the pain along the way. The other thing is, don't wait until you have 100% the perfect plan in order to get started, specifically when we talk about traceability. It is a journey. It is something that is a continuous improvement practice. If you wait until you're perfect, you're never going to get there, because the truth is 100% perfection is really not, possible. So as you work towards that, you can start measuring the benefit of having good master data, of having expiration dates on barcodes. What visibility do you have when all those opportunities open up, right? And you can better manage your supply chain. And of course, when it comes to communicating with your trading partners, once you have that support from leadership within your company, make sure you're talking to trading partners and partnering with them, understanding what they expect or what their needs are. um, there's really benefit for everybody when it comes to traceability programs, master data cleanup programs. And this is something, again, you cannot do in a silo. And finally, I think what gets measured gets done. So always measure what the progress has been. Always measure, if you're setting specific criteria for your trading partners, give them feedback, because without feedback, they can't improve. So just establish those monitoring measures and metrics and systems in order to be able to show improvement as it happens.
Yeah, Lucy, I think you covered everything actually. And I was just going to say, take this as not as a silo project that you want to do, data quality project. It is something. It should be part of the culture, part of the DNA, and take a holistic approach on how the company operates going forward, and sharing the same message with your trading partners, and your category managers, merchants, operations, everybody in the organization, that data quality is, and we don't compromise on it. And also, it is not a single initiative. It's just not a you start and finish. It is a continuous process, right? So there is going to be continuous refinement. Just to what Lucy was saying, it is not, you cannot get to 100% round one. It should be a continuous process that is part of your daily operations, on everything that we do.
Yeah, Rosa, I don't have anything further to add other than, echoing, look at the whole enterprise holistically. As a CIO, certainly I would take that on, rather than individual project by project. And secondly, once you've built out your strategic plan, engage ecosystem partners, as I mentioned before, making sure that the interoperability component is there and that the ease of integration will be there to help you, by selecting partners who would have a lot of experience with what you want to achieve. And those are probably some of the guiding principles that I typically would go through. Thanks.
Right. So I don't see any questions so far in the chat, but we still have 5 minutes. Okay, we do have one question from Alaha. Sorry, if I pronounce your name incorrectly. How would they, this person's question is, how would they quantitatively determine the cost of quote unquote bad data to the company?
So when we talk about master data, for example, just out of experience, because we did a whole Six Sigma project on this, I can tell you a good way to start is take your product information, compare it to your trading partners, and see how different that is. Number one, we, for example, measured our product, our branded items, compared to distribution systems. They were supposed to be 100% the same, right? We emailed whatever they had to have in their systems. And ultimately, we found about 80% of the products had discrepancies that would impact in a big way our logistics or our truckload optimization. So we found there was a problem there. And then we took it a step ahead and said, okay, let's look at full truckloads, for example, product shipping from a supplier, let's say, into a redistribution center. Full truckloads. And I'm going to take an example that you can extrapolate to any product, but mayo. People like mayo in their sandwiches. And this is all in the case study, by the way. This is all public. So we were able to quickly quantify there was a discrepancy in our system and in other systems as to the weight of the mayo. When we were planning for truckloads, we realized that the truck was not being effectively used. And that translated to $100,000, just half a pound of mayo. That's how big it could be, right? But if you look at, this is what's happening today. We did not measure trucks being overweight or trucks having to come back to the dock and drop off product and the customer not receiving the right product because the truck was overweight. All of these things are typically things that are overlooked and not measured, but something as simple as that. This is how many cases you can fit in a truck with the current data. Let's go measure the data. Let's go measure representative samples, of this product and see if this is the right weight and dimensions. And if it's not, compare what you could actually have in those trucks. And that's an easy math equation that you can actually understand what the cost of bad master data is doing to your process.
We have another questions towards Lucy. Shahid said, as an AI and machine learning become increasingly integrated into retail and wholesale operations, how can the foundational structure provided by GS1 standards be leveraged to ensure the quality and interoperability of data used for this advanced analytics, ultimately leading to more accurate forecasting, personalized customer experience, and optimized supply chain management?
This is a great question. And I think it's the same, principle. AI can only tell you what information you have given it, right? Sometimes I don't know if you've asked ChatGPT something, it comes up with a really weird answer, right? Because it really depends what source it's looking at. If AI has the right product with the right identifiers, it knows what it's looking at and how to decipher all this data about this item, right? Then whatever AI is telling you about your inventory, your forecasting, your supply and demand planning, all of that will be correct. But if you have disparate data and AI is looking at different identifiers that make no sense, the same thing with the FDA, right? They were trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together doing a foodborne illness investigation, and it was super hard because the data, they could not link it. So interoperability for artificial intelligence is absolutely critical. And it is a vital component of being able to trust what AI is learning and it's giving back to you as part of those analytics. Otherwise, you cannot trust AI. If you can't trust your data, AI is going to be wrong, exponentially wrong, because it's a lot of data it ingests.
Yeah, I would just add a small item too. I mean, the prompt engineers who are going to be writing prompts, banging against large data sets, you definitely would want a very standardized data set so that the models that are getting built and the prompts are going to work according to industry standards would be a lot better than anything that's proprietary and unique to any particular install. So that would be another example of what I mentioned earlier, that having a robust and clean and standardized data foundation have a tremendous impact, right, and implications to reaping the benefits of AI.
I have to wrap it up because we only have 1 minute left and we'd love to give that 1 minute back to you guys because it's still a work day. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. And thank you so much again for our speakers to sharing all the valuable insight. I'm sure that we need a lot more time to digest. And we will send out the deck as well as the case study and the recording a little bit later. Thank you so much, guys, again. And I hope you have a great rest of your day and week.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.